I'm very excited because today we have 3 CEOs who have taken local journeys, who have defied some of the pressure to scale nationally, and in doing so have strengthened their businesses and our community at the same time. And what's better than that? So first, I'm going to let them introduce themselves and their stories, but I'll go ahead and tell you their names and titles. We have Joy Seitz with American Solar Roofing, and something I really loved to learn about American Solar Roofing in the last week was just how focused you are on modernizing the home and creating that infrastructure for the home that allows us to step into the future in a resilient and sustainable way. So they're going to each go ahead and give you an introduction so that you know the lens that they're bringing to these really interesting topics that we're going to dive into today. So Joy, I'll have you kick us off.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning. And I know that we are, between lunch, so this hopefully will make it go fast. So Joy Seitz, CEO of American Solar and Roofing. I came into the solar renewable energy space in 2009. In 2014, I took over as CEO. Before I did that, I worked in the lobbying realm, nonprofit worlds, and venture capital. So brought a lot of different aspects, I suppose, to taking over as the second CEO of the company and working on stabilizing and growing. Also an Arizona native and ASU graduate.
I want to hear the stories of what led you to stay local. So what made, in your journey, what was that decision like, and what was the experience of saying, okay, we're going to build locally? And was that intentional, or was that more of a meander to land at that conclusion?
Oh, okay, get off. Okay, don't play my ideas. So again, I'm an Arizona native. I was in finance. I was in a finance program at the West Campus while I was working in venture capital right before the dot-com boom and bust. So I was in college learning about the fundamentals of how you evaluate and value a company. And then I was going into my day job and learning how Yahoo was being valued, kind of like how we're seeing AI stocks today, right? The valuation is like off the chain. And so from an early onset, I was like, equity and fair, and like, that doesn't even make sense. And so I grew up with the Jack Welch kind of race to the bottom for the employees, but race to the top for the shareholders. And again, just my core values and my conviction of who I am and how I was raised, that just didn't clock for me. Even when I did lobbying work, right, there has to be a right and a wrong. So I suppose that because I was raised with core values and caring about humans, my desire when I took over my company in 2014 as CEO, it was just a conviction. I guess it's just who I am on designing the handbook. So I was, what I believe in my heart is that businesses can do right by its employees. We do not need government intervention if my handbook writes correctly, takes care of its employees. We establish healthy work-life balance for truly. So it's just a conviction. At the same time, I do believe that is a scalable model. I do think about how do I franchise that, because really what it comes down to is that then how I train the franchisee is to hold those core values. How I hire and fire is on those core values. How I would get into partnerships with people is based on those core values. So local, it can be still a national if a big company wanted to take care of their employees and think like a local business should. They could. They just don't because of shareholder desires that we currently live in today.
As the decision was intentional to build locally, not to stay small, but to build locally for growth, what have the implications been to your business? Has that shifted your role in the community? And what has the impact been to your bottom line?
For me, local, and maybe he just said it too, right? Local is a mindset of the values you bring as a local company. So I could be local in another state and still be driving those values. And so one of the first things I did, so I do EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System. If you have any desire to scale I see a shout out. If you have any desire to do scale, I highly recommend it. I was broke I was broke. So my friend, but I was running the business, and it was when I was restabilizing everything. My friend was like, okay, as soon as you have enough money, you need to read you need to read Rocket Fuel, and then you need to get an implementer. And then like that changed my life. But so with that being said, so one of the first things I did while running an EOS is I identified my purpose. And the purpose of our company is affecting revolutionary change through our employees, our customers, and community. What I do is solar and roofing in the residential and commercial space. But but my purpose of my company is global. And so for me, if I take care of my employees and then I take care of my customers, then I am ultimately in my community. And I am in my community through the way of my COO, who's like, I am involved in the church, right? Or my other teammates who are involved in their community in another way. And so when you're defining and you're building your company, again, your footprint and how you lead, bless you, and how you, I got you too. That was me last night. As you lead through it, it is that guiding principle that I always go back to is, so if I'm making decisions, business decisions, is this hitting my core values correctly? And is it going to be affecting revolutionary change for my employees, my customers, our community? And if it isn't, lit dropping for us, who's had a door knocker for solar, right? We do not door knock. Haven't. Everybody else did. National entities came in. They completely destroyed the brand of solar, and then they left the market. And now I'm here to tell you that I'm sorry, and we're starting all over again. But I knew in my heart that wasn't right. I could have, or leasing, for example. I could have offered a lease on how you pay for solar, but and I was a business major. I know what the implication is to my community, and I did not want that to happen for my community. So how it helped my bottom line is I don't know, there was probably 400 solar installers here in 2009 when I joined, and there's about 5 of us left. And so that is how it's impacted my bottom line, is by staying true. And I don't know if it happened to you, when you stay true, and you don't have any competition yet, but when you stay true and your competitors do other things, and from the outside it looks like they're scaling, and then you get judged because you're not scaling that fast, or your business doesn't look as strong, that was like defeating. But I still had that conviction, and now I get to be like, I knew it. But dang, it took 10 years to have I knew it, because all of the destruction of the industry had to happen. So it helped because I feel good. It helps because I can stare at you, right? If you are one of my customers, I feel very good that you had a good experience, and that there's referrals. And then it helped because I'm still here today. And also, you learn all your lessons in the first 10 years, of running a business. So if you can learn all your lessons, and then come out the other side, that is when you see that hockey stick growth also. You do have to learn all of it. And then, so that's why, again, it's the core values of local for me that matters the most.
How have you differentiated as a business with your values through your local community? What does that look like? How have you stayed competitive?
We're just going to keep beating down on the core values, but like you really truly stay competitive once you identify who you are and how you want to be in the community. That was it for me. And I knew right and wrong. I mean, it was the first business decision. I took over like I said, in 2014, and solar leasing through Solar City had just started the conversation in 2009. And they were stripping market shares. And we're the original solar installer here in Arizona. So we were the first to grid tie a solar system into the on a home on the city of Phoenix, the Sands home. We were the first to do it in the city of Scottsdale. We were the first to deploy a utility scale project for APS up at Embry-Riddle. So for all intents and purposes, we owned the market, right? There was no competition. My sales team was like, this is great. We're just order takers. Like there was no selling. Everybody wanted solar. And so when the competition started coming, and the stripping of the market share, and the like, what's going on, and we're not pivoting, and then we're losing the money, and then chaos, and then they're offering Silicon Valley money to their employees, right? Like I was up against everything. Luckily at that time, the show Silicon Valley was happening on HBO, And so if you've never watched it, like I was Pied Piper in the situation. So it was like Misery Loves Company. Hooli was Solar City. So I, I was like, yeah, it's totally happening all the time. But again, I knew because of my business acumen that what they were doing was not going to work. And it was in my soul, and everyone thought I was crazy. I was a canary in the coal mine 10 years before that. And so, having that conviction from the jump was just very important to me. And I just genuinely knew that it was going to last, and that, the company would survive and we would get through it.
Despite being from three completely different industries, different models completely, what I'm hearing is that the kind of public-facing differentiation of quality and customer experience is, enabled essentially by the differentiation internally, by how you train, how you support your people so that they can carry those values to the front lines of the people that you work with and what their experience working with you is. So I think those are some really strong takeaways. All three of you were in business or navigating during the pandemic. And the pandemic was this major moment of adaptation for businesses. If you didn't adapt, you didn't have a business in a lot of cases, right? So can you give maybe in 90 seconds each a story of adaptation that made your business stronger?
My one major differentiator is in construction, you're always over budget, never on time, and the people that are supposed to do it never call you and tell you an update on the construction project. And so I spend it's young men who are running typically the construction side, and majority of people define calling a customer and saying, hey, we're going to be late, or hey, the job has to get pushed, that they define that through having a hard conversation or conflict. And so then they just stay in denial on, I don't want to call that customer and tell them that we have to be there tomorrow for some reason. And so we put all of our leadership team through like how to be a great boss, and then also through something called positive intelligence, which is like working on your SABs, working on the stories that you tell yourself, so that again, young men are able to have quote unquote a hard conversation, not only with our customers, but I'm also teaching them, right, how to be a good partner, how to be a good dad. And so having that experience is a huge differentiator. So then the customers feel safe. It's a $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 project, right? So creating safety the moment that they deposit that check is critical for us. And so I'm always having to do that, a lot of emotional intelligence work with men who may not have been skilled. Unless you fight, like I fought fossil fuel before the pandemic. So thank you. And so if you fight fossil fuel, you can do anything. So I'm not to say anybody who was involved in the pandemic, right, and was a business owner, everyone experienced hardship during that. Sadly, it was just another day in business for me. Like, because fighting fossil fuel almost stripped me, like my house went into foreclosure twice. The water bill I couldn't pay the water bill at my office, and the water got shut off and people couldn't flush the toilets. Like, there were times in which I should have been bankrupt and insolvent, right? Because of the fighting in which I was leading. And I was the lead lobbyist basically for the industry. And then I had a whole bunch of competitors who would come in with me. But I did the lion's share of the strategy work and the lobbying work and the relationships and the phone calls at 9:00. So for me, fighting fossil fuel was a pandemic, in the sense that you wake up every day and you understand your threats and you understand how you can get through those threats, and then you pivot. And if 5 things weren't changing every day when I was fighting fossil fuel, what's going on? And so that's my experience of just having to pivot and having to find resiliency in times. Is that there was always, even with the foreclosure of my house and door knock, process servers coming and wanting to sue me, there was never a time in my heart that I didn't think that this was the wrong thing to do. Like, I always knew it. So whether it's COVID or a war, or like what else can be given to us at this point, just if you have that conviction in your soul, just don't give up on yourself and do the, you know, what if questions like the previous panel did, like what if tomorrow it is better, like what would I do? And that was how I got through it all.